Top of the live stream to you. Welcome once again. It's EDH Study Hall. This is John, also known on the internet as Johnny Slivers. Yeah, that's kind of like not my line, but I'll borrow it for now. Anyway, here we are. Here we are going through beta. We're going to pick up where we left off. I know this just feels all boring and drab, and I get that. I get this is not the easiest thing to watch or listen to. Really, it's just archival kind of stuff. So I'm talking my way through it. And I'm just, I don't know. I'll try and think of ways to keep things interesting. But really, it's just mapping out the history of the game. And if you're really just looking for me saying the word really over and over and over, this is the perfect podcast for you. All right. So I'm determined to keep on this mission. I want to make sure that I go through all the cards, not just because I may have forgotten things from when I used to play way back in the olden days before the rocks cooled. There's a whole, again, I'll remind us all through this process. Like there's a 12-year gap. I stopped playing about Urza Block, and it was 12 years later that I actually started getting back into the game. But there's a huge gap, my card pool knowledge. And, there's a lot of cards out there that people who are new to this game aren't going to be aware of, even mundane, silly cards that may not ever pop up on their radar. If you've started playing in the last 5 years and you're getting introduced to Commander, or you're getting introduced to whatever format you're deciding to branch out into after Standard, it's easy to miss tons and tons of cards that aren't being fed to you as far as suggestions. You go to the more reputable sites like Brainstorm Brewery or EDH Rec or Star City Games, Card Kingdom, Channel Fireball. The people writing there are telling you what the best options are, and those are good resources. But at the same time, many of the times they're going through and they're telling you what the best lines of play are, and that's perfectly fine. And if there's a card that might be a neat trick for something you're doing in EDH, it might not get showcased just because it's not the optimal play. And I know there are content creators out there that are doing that. They are looking, trying to crack the code and looking for things that might have gotten forgotten. And that's why we see things blow up when it comes to prices. So, there are people doing that. But something's going to slip through the cracks. And that's what this is here for. EDH Study Hall is determined to go through and make sure that we've covered all of our bases. So it is archived. And if you just want this as background noise while you're listening, doing something else, doing the dishes, I don't know, just something to be out there for you to be like passively taking information in that you may not have otherwise gone seeking out on your own, or somebody else may not have presented to you. That's my mission statement. There it is. 13 episodes in. I think I got the mission statement. So we're going to go ahead and move on into the project now that I've gone through this thought process trying to self-validate what I'm here for. And let's get moving along. The last episode, in episode 12, we ended with Mana Flare, old school classic flavor for ramping up in red. That ability has kind of shifted more into a green archetype. It was, back in the earliest days of Magic, not all the colors quite lined up with the archetypes that were baked into their plan. So, Wizards corrected course on that one over time and became more of a green thing. Still sometimes in red, but ultimately more often you'd see it in green. And we'll get to those years from now, I'm sure. Now, on the opposite end of Mana Flare is Mana Short. So we're going to switch over to the 7th edition version here. Mana Short is an instant for 2 and a blue. It says tap all lands target player controls and empty his or her mana pool. This is reading, you know what? We need to go to Oracle text because I feel like that's reading different than the original version. All opponents' lands are tapped and opponent's mana is emptied. Opponent takes no damage. Oh, okay. I'm getting that confused with another card that we already covered. This in effect is a type of a counter spell, so to speak. If somebody's it forces someone to make a play. So if you're if you want to force someone to play out a certain type, they're trying to time out a battle plan, and you want to force them to play something in their first main phase, you mana short them and force them to tap out and use their mana and get it into their mana pool. Opponent takes no damage. Opponent mana pool emptied. Oh, right. So let's reading the card. And this is another reason I go through here, because I got to go through these and make sure I'm understanding the card as well. So you tap all lands target player controlled, empty his or her mana pool. That's the other important part. So the only thing a person can do, if an opponent gets faced with a mana short, the only thing they can do is instant speed responses. That's it. They can dump the mana. They're going to lose their mana pool. Whatever's in the mana pool is going to go away. All their lands are going to tap out. It's going to go away. So they have to use that immediately. They can't use it for summon spells, enchantment spells, or artifact spells unless they've got Vidal Ori. So you really bottlenecked what they're able to do. So if they've got an instant speed anything, they got to use it now. You want to force something like a Cyclonic Rift. That's something you could do. If you know someone's got Cyclonic Rift overload mana up, waiting for something to happen, and you don't want them to blow the board out. Maybe you've got a Boros player at the table that's trying to go wide and go big, and you're thinking we don't want the Cyclonic Rift player to win. You can play this you can point this one at the Cyclonic Rift player and see if you can force that out of their hand before, say, the aggro player kind of goes all in. That way you maybe save the board state. Maybe you don't necessarily win if you force that out, but it's an interesting political move. But I don't think it gets a lot of play. I think if we take this over to EDH Rec, we're gonna find ourselves I don't know. I'm gonna bet that the numbers are less than Mana Barbs, which was about 2,000 range, and we're gonna find out. Mana short. Way less. Because a lot of times I think what you're going to find is people don't see it as a counter spell because they're forcing something out. It's not fully stopping a spell. It's just forcing someone's hand, perhaps. But it does not get a lot of play. It's under 300. That's 255 cards, decks reporting it being used. And that is, it's an underplayed card, I think. I think there can be a home for it. You got to know what you're trying to do with it. You have to have a plan for it. But I think it's a card that people don't appreciate. I think it can be put to good use, but it's a timing thing. Ultimately, you untap. You play this during someone's upkeep. You can end their turn essentially. I mean, they can still get their attack phase, but if they were going to do anything cheeky, they can't do it with their tap all lands. Yeah, they can't do it with their lands. They're going to have to use their mana rocks. So you can bottleneck somebody for a turn. So that's something that can be viable. But we're going to move on. We're going to get on to our next card in the list. After mana short, we have Mana Vault. This card belongs in every EDH deck ever. And I believe it's on reserve list. We'll go check on Scryfall. Mana Vault was one of those mana rocks. Was like, it always had this kind of stigma because it was, you got to pay so much to untap it, but there are so many tools to untap something like a Mana Vault. Let's go check that reserve list. Does it say who's telling us if it's reserve list? I'm trying to remember what website was showing us that information. I'm sure we can find it, but it's not here. I know, you know what? I know where it goes. I think does this one tell us? I know Goldfish will tell us, so we can pop over there. I'm pretty sure if it's not reserve list, it's probably very unlikely that it will ever get used, outside of like supplemental sets and like specialty kind of printings. I highly doubt that still ever see the light of day, and definitely not in standard, not in modern like a Modern Horizons kind of thing. I don't think that either. No, I think that would be a far cry. Mana Vault. And Mana Vault, where does it say? All right, so on MTG Goldfish, they usually tell us if it's reserve list. What else is definitely on reserve list? We know Black Lotus is. I think that's. Check here. Dang nabbit, where was it? Yeah, here I'm just thinking out loud here. My apologies. Yeah, I know there's some place I must have been Scryfall. Maybe it's not on the reserve list. Yeah, I'll be darned. Black double check here for Black Lotus. Boop. Yeah, I'm blanking out. My apologies. I really I should know where they're pointing reserve list. Mana Vault, I don't know. I think it is. I believe Mana Vault is reserve list, but if it isn't, even if it isn't, it is highly unlikely. No, right? They printed it here, so it can't be reserve list. That's right. Okay, there. Okay, see, I don't think a reserve list carriage can get a printing outside. Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think it's reserve list, but it is a highly powered card for EDH. And the fact that, let's go ahead and get into those details. The card itself reads 1 mana for a casting cost. And the way it works is you tap to add 3 mana to your mana pool and does not untap during your untap phase. If it remains untapped during your upkeep, Mana Vault deals 1 damage to you. Pay 4 mana to untap Mana Vault. Use this ability only during your upkeep. And then taps to add 3 colorless mana to your mana pool. So yeah, the one drawback about Mana Vault is the fact that you have to untap this during your upkeep. Otherwise, you take a point of damage. And sometimes, in EDH, taking that point of damage is not a big tax. It's not a big deal. And you can get away with playing this card and tapping it out for early advantage and maybe take 3 or 4 points of damage and still be in the game and not have to worry about it all that much. But it is a highly powerful card. It ramps you from turn 1 to turn 4, basically. And this is it stopped getting printings after 5th edition, and all these versions, you're not going to typically see anything for under $25. So it's worth the money. It's worth getting them now. It is unlikely, I believe, to see, like, they got a rare shift up to a mythic, so it's very unlikely that you'll actually ever see this card probably under 25. That's my guess. You want more better stats on that, go talk to the people who actually do finance. But yeah, Mana Vault, if you don't got one, get one. After Mana Vault, we go on to Meekstone. Meekstone is a sweet little artifact. I don't know if it gets a lot of play, but it's a 1 mana artifact. It's called a continuous artifact. It got printings up through 7th edition. What else we got here? International. Yeah, it looks like 7th was the last that we saw of Meekstone. It's kind of odd art. I kind of like the original art a little better. Some OG Quentin Hoover. So yeah, 1 mana artifact. No creature with power greater than 2 untaps during their controller's untap phase. So this is interesting. See, I was kind of working on an article for the Commander 19 stuff. I think, we'll I don't know when that comes out, but I was talking about the morph deck, and there's a thing you can do with Ixodron where you can start flipping everything upside down. You can flip all the cards over when it comes into play, and you can loop that with Deadeye Navigator, and turn everything that's a non-token creature into a 2/2, just a 2/2 creature, not a morph, just a 2/2 vanilla blank creature. You do that, and you play something like Coat of Arms, and then you loop out with something, I don't know, something that taps everything out greater than untaps. Yeah, you could. It's a really cobbled kind of combo, but it's one of those things where if you're playing a wide aggro deck, this is a great way to kind of lock out the big bad beefy cards that are on at the table. Although I have a feeling that this may not be quite strong enough to make that big of a dent in EDH. I think if we go looking at the numbers, I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers were low. And we'll take a peek at that. Meekstone, I'm wrong. It's only, percentage wise, it's only 1%, but we're looking at 3,700 decks are reporting using the card. Way better than some of the other numbers. I'd say that's decent for an old school original like a Meekstone. but probably those numbers are probably low because it's a little bit narrow in its focus. So it's going to be, yeah, I can see that being a bit of a challenge. But if you've got the right build for it, off the top of my head, I'm not thinking, yeah, like this will work in the goblin deck for keeping big things tapped down. More of like a control deck where you can actually tap things down. That's probably where you would want to put that. But we're gonna move along. All right, so after Meekstone, we're gonna get into Meekstone, Merfolk of the Pearl Trident. Burn it with fire. This is hot garbage, as you can see. So it is a vanilla 1/1 for 1 blue mana. The only redeeming quality is that it is Merfolk, therefore it is tribal relevant. But much like Mons Goblin Graders, which we will get to at some point here, this doesn't. God help me if we see any numbers if this shows up in EDH Rec. Oh boy, Merfolk. 25 people put this. God. Nope. 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 No, I wouldn't advise playing Merfolk of the Pearl Trident. Plain simple. Mesa Pegasus, flying bands, weird mechanic. One is a 1/1 for 1 and a white, and even with those keyword abilities, it's just not worth it. They didn't print it past 5th edition because there were better cards to print, and it's just a cheeky little it's Pegasus. I don't know, maybe someday we'll get into a true proper Pegasus tribal, but I wouldn't hold my breath for that one. Mind Twist, on the other hand, this one can get saucy. Mind Twist is one of the early day hand hate cards. It was one of those things where you could swamp Dark Ritual, Mind Twist, and really just dig into someone's hand. Target player discards X cards at random from his or her hand. If that player does not have enough cards, his or her entire hand is discarded. So Mind Twist is the random picking. That's the thing. The fact that the cards can be hit randomly means you can hit their lands. A lot of discard cards or a lot of hand hate cards after the fact, like later on in the history of the game, got very specific. You could only pick certain things. Like you could choose what it was, but it had to be like a planeswalker, or it had to be non-creature cards, or it had to be, it was specified like what you were able to actually take out of their hand. And very often it was not land. Between this and Hymn to Torak, I believe that's also another random discard. Those cards were very powerful in that it was random, and you could totally wreck someone's day if, say, they kept a 2-land hand and you nailed their second land because you were on the play, or you were on the draw. Then that ruins someone's day. That's why this card commands any of the pricing that it does. But because it's not really a legacy staple, I don't believe it might see some play in EDH. I don't know. I imagine there's some moderate play in EDH, but I don't think it would be that big. I think you've got better things. By the time you get EDH is a game that gets in, will go on and on. So what you end up with is a late game card that kind of, I don't know, it's just better things to do. If you're going to dump mana into a next spell, you do other things. Mons Goblin Raiders, another one for the trash heap. Just, I don't know. This one, maybe throw it in the wood chipper. It's the only thing that's giving it any credence is the fact that it is Goblin. But and maybe now that we had, I think it was in Modern Horizons, we saw the printing of Mons, the actual Mons character. That was pretty cool to see that throw, that callback to this reference here. But this card was just simply a placeholder until better goblins for 1/1 showed up, like Raging Goblin. You have this or Raging Goblin, you play Raging Goblin. So yeah, again, early days, they were looking for just the characters. They were looking for basic kind of cards to fill the gap. After Mons Goblin Graders, we have Mountains A, B, and C. These are Douglas Schuller pieces from the earliest days, the original Mountains that he made up for Wizards. again, if you are playing anything red and you've got a beta mountain, you play a beta mountain because it just looks sweet. Beta or alpha, whatever it is, those are just fine looking cards. Good God, this is a $17 card. Why is now I wonder why Mountain C costs so much more than Mountain A and B. I don't know. That's pretty sweet. I like to think I've got a forest somewhere, beta forest. I have an alpha forest. What are these going for? Oh my God, they really went up. Yeah, people are into those basic lands, and when you can get your hands on these, you hold on to them. Wow, good stuff. The Moxen. Let's get into some Moxen. I'm pretty sure these are banned, so let's go double check that. Always check those ban lists. Big bads, Mox. Yeah, Mox Sapphire, Mox Ruby, Mox Pearl, Mox Emerald, and Mox Jet are all banned in EDH, and for very good reason. For 0 mana, you get a card that permanently advances you a turn. So all the Mox in here are super expensive, and you just can't play them in EDH because they would wreck face. You would play you play any multicolored commander. You play, I don't know, a 5-color commander just because, and you play all the Moxen, and basically you can go from in the nut draw. You have all these in your hand and something that draws you cards. You're basically going from turn 1 to turn, I don't know, 6. That's insane and totally busted. But they are like the iconic power cards. The cool one with Mox Jet, if you take Mox Jet and you put it up to Force Field, the artwork actually links up. You turn Force Field sideways, and you can see the artwork here will actually line up. It's like one of the first Easter eggs in Magic the Gathering. So yeah, that was that. Natural Selection is the next one. This one didn't get past Unlimited, and I think maybe we'll take a look at this. We'll take a look at Scryfall for Natural Selection. Natural Selection. There be the Oracle text. Okay, so you look at the top 3 cards of target player's library, put them back in any order. You may have that player shuffle their library. So this is so blue. This is what was this? This is Porton. I think this is the same as, is that right? I think it's Porton, except it's at instant speed. So this was a weird thing for green to do, because you could do this to anybody's you could do this to anyone's top deck and just like ruin their top deck and buy yourself some time. It's just bizarro. And you can get a collector's edition for under $20 apparently. That's a funky thing to do. Like in EDH, you can probably get away with playing collector's edition. Unlimited for, I mean, if you got the money to throw $110 at a Natural Selection, I suppose, but I believe you can do the same thing for way less money, but it happens to be at sorcery speed. That's the drawback. You have to do this at sorcery speed. But let's see what we got. Commander 2018 printed Porton, which was 1 blue at sorcery speed. Look at the top 3 cards of target player's library, then put them back in any order. You may have that player shuffle their library and then draw a card at the beginning of your next turn. So you get to draw a card. You can wreck someone's top deck, and you can do it for under 50 cents in blue. However, if you try and do that, and if you absolutely insist on having the second version going off for Natural Selection, you pay $100+, and there it is. You can do the same thing. You don't get to draw the card, but that's one of those examples where this was definitely a blue ability. This is the earliest days of R&D. They were still figuring out their game, and right here is a classic example of that again. And it's not a bad card. I would be. I want to see if natural. I imagine the numbers are low for Natural Selection, just because it is so expensive, and you can do the same thing a little bit slower for Porton with Porton. So natural selection only showing up in 9 decks, rightly so. I'm not surprised. This is a supply issue, most likely. And just kind of odd in green. And then you go with something like Porton. With Porton, I believe, oh, there we go. Lots more. Much cheaper and easier to find. Yeah. So that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So natural selection, it's a funky card to have. I suppose, I mean, you could stick this on an Icecrown Scepter, I guess. But this is really one of those cards that's just, it's a cool card. You probably have, I don't know, in green, there's probably other things you're looking to do than try and mess up someone's top deck. Not that that's not valuable, but yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it was an odd bird. Pun totally intended. Let's see, getting into the next one here, we've got Nether Shadow. How are we doing here? Yep. Nether Shadow is one of the old early recursion cards and never made it past 5th edition, apparently. I do like the revised versions. 4th edition versions are just fine too. Let's see, did they clean for 4th edition? They clean up that text. It was a weird recursion card. It was a 1/1 for 2 black. It is a shadow, summon shadow. I wonder if there's any clarification on what that actual type is. Net creature spirit. Okay, so they corrected up they cleaned it up here. It is a spirit, which that's pretty good. It's got haste for a 1/1 at the beginning of your upkeep. If Nether Shadow is in your graveyard with 3 or more creature cards above it, you may put Nether Shadow into play. So straight into play, you have to have 3 creatures on top of it. It's a weird recursion card. It was a card that you could work around back in the early days. I don't think it's going to show up with a whole lot of. I don't think it's gonna. I don't know what are the odds here? We're gonna see. Yeah, it's a low count. It's the under 200, 141 decks showing it, and it was like it's just there's when it comes to graveyard reanimation in Commander, there's just so many better cards to go with, and this is definitely a pass. It's a neat card, but it is not so neat that you're gonna like jam it into a Commander deck. After Nether Shadow, we get to Nettling Imp. Nettling Imp could definitely. I think Nettling Imp could have a little more traction in something like EDH. It's fragile. It's a little expensive for what it's doing here. You can get revised copies for 33 cents because it's really the original. It was part of a Nettling Imp forces a creature to attack and you kill that creature with a Royal Assassin. That was like one of the early combos that people thought they broke the game and it was time to sell their cards off. Crazy talk. Excuse me. All right. And Nettling Imp, I want to say it's let's see, a 1/1. It doesn't even fly. Shame on them. It's got wings. 2 in a black, and you tap it to force participate. God. There's so many cards in the early days of Magic with these walls of small novelettes of text. So let's go ahead and get that. Let's see if we can get something cleaned up here. No. Oh, very low count there. No, we're supposed to be going through Scryfall. All right, looking for Nettling Imp. Nettling Imp. Here we go. You tap it. Choose target non-wall creature the active player has controlled continuously since the beginning of the turn. So something that doesn't have summoning sickness. That creature attacks this turn if able. Destroy it at the beginning of the next end step if it didn't attack this turn. Activate this ability only during an opponent's turn before attackers are declared. So this is forcing a non-optimal attack in a deck where you may have either tricks and strategies for taking it out, or you want to force an attack. Let's say somehow you're playing a Pillow Fort deck that's in black and you want to force an opponent to attack another opponent. You use this card, you can say this creature is going to attack. Just you have to attack or it gets destroyed. But it just cost to benefit, like the cost to cast this, the fact that it's so fragile, it's just kind of a, and I think people see all the text and they're like, yeah, other things do things easier, perhaps. That's probably why the numbers are low on this one, like less than 100 cards actually being played in, as reported by EDH Rec. And let's see, Nettling Imp. What else? Niv Disc. Oh, Nivinral's Disc. This has always been just a fun card. Like this hits the table and people are start to pucker up. It's like, okay, who's got the disc? Who's gonna pop it? Who's gonna get rid of that stupid disc? Because you're playing a multiplayer game. Somebody's gonna try and kill this card. Even then, it's still not a bad card to play. It's been printed plenty of times. It's not expensive, so that's good. And the low cost on this makes it worth having, even in your collection, just to put it in there. If you have multiple EDH decks and you're running short on wrath effects and this is what you got, you go with this. So it's a 4-mana artifact. Individual's Disc enters the battlefield tapped, rightly so. 4-mana wrath for free. It'd be a 5-mana wrath, but it fits in all the decks, would be busted. 1 and tap, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So it kills itself in the process, although it says destroy. So perhaps if you could make it indestructible. Interesting. I wonder if there's a way. Can that be done? Can you make an art? How would you do that? If there's a way to make it indestructible, I think the way it's reading, destroy all artifact creatures. Let's see, find a newest possible version here. Anthologies. Oh, that's, yeah. Okay. Some Eternal Masters. Destroy all artifacts and creatures. I believe the way I'm reading this card, if there's a way for you to make Nivinral's Disc indestructible, I don't think it kills itself. I think that's it. I don't think it's a sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice. Yeah. All right. Interesting. That's interesting. Okay. So Nev Disc covers a lot of bases. It wipes out many of the major threats. The only thing, it just doesn't touch planeswalkers. That's the real drawback there. It's not going to actually hit planeswalkers. And that's fine. Like for an original card from way back, that's to be expected. But if you Nev Disc is definitely an original Magic card worth having in your collection and putting in a commander deck. And there's some other cards that are going to do the job a little bit better, but well, plenty better. But it's still Nev Disc. That's good stuff. And I think we'll end on Nightmare. There we go. We're going to end with the Nightmare. All right. So Nightmare has been around for a long time. It's got some real, it's like one of those, like can be such an awesome card in a mono black deck. Basically, if you're on curve, it's a 6/6 for 6 that flies, because Nightmare's power and toughness are each equal to the number of swamps you control. So I don't think the only downside is this is a risky card in Commander if you're a multicolor, unless you're playing that's Yawgmoth or Tomb of Yawgmoth. Having to have nothing but swamps can be a liability in Commander. Not having that, there's only so many things that black can do. There's some limitations on what it can take care of. But Nightmare, I think if you're going to play Nightmare in Commander, you might as well play the original art, because it just looks super sweet. It looks like something out of a heavy metal rock video from the 80s. So yeah, it's like this old school gem that people used to get really excited about, and they've just printed better cards since then. So honestly, for 6 mana, you better be doing something pretty awesome in Commander. And unfortunately, Nightmare doesn't quite get there. So I think, yeah, we'll wrap it up there, because I can hear myself putting people to sleep for this. So thank you once again for joining us. I will pick this up again most likely tomorrow at some point in time, and we'll just keep going on through it all. We're going to cover the bases and hopefully find some gems along the way. If you like it, click that like button, subscribe. Leave a comment. Tell me something. Tell me a thing. Just tell me. That's fine. You can also find me on Twitter on the Twitters at Johnny Slivers, and also on Tin Street Hooligans. You'll find me over there on Tuesday nights. We are kind of this almost turning into this Viva variety show of Magic the Gathering, where we have guest hosts and we do games and then we just talk about all manner of things, and it's a hoot. It's a hoot. So thank you again. Hope all is well, and until next time, may your top decks be epic.